Can I play for food? They laughed at the homeless girl, not knowing she's a piano prodigy. Before we start today's story, comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss what's next. May I play for food? The soft, shy voice of a 12-year-old girl echoed through the grand lobby of the Continental Hotel. Her tiny voice cut through the grown-up chatter like a small bird's song in a thunderstorm. Everyone stopped talking. The sound of clinking glasses and quiet music suddenly vanished. Dozens of people turned their heads toward the door. There, standing at the entrance of the shiny main hall, was a little black girl with big brown eyes full of hope and fear. Her name was Lila Carter. Her eyes weren't looking at the fancy people or the tables full of food. They were fixed on one thing, a beautiful black grand piano that gleamed under the huge crystal chandelier. The piano looked like it was glowing, and Lila couldn't take her eyes off it. She wore simple clothes, an old sweater, jeans that were a little too big, and shoes that had seen better days. She held a small, torn backpack tightly against her chest like a shield. Her hair was neat but plain. Compared to the rich women in shiny dresses and the men in black suits, she looked like she didn't belong there at all. "Who let that child in here?" whispered a lady with bright blonde hair and a sparkling necklace, clutching her glass of champagne. "There must be a mistake," said another man, frowning. "Where's security?" The funny thing was that this party, this very fancy event, was supposed to be about helping poor children. It was a charity gala for underprivileged youth. Yet when a poor child actually appeared, the crowd acted as if she had done something wrong. Lila had heard about the event earlier that evening while walking past the hotel. Her stomach had been empty for 2 days. When she looked through the glass doors and saw the piano, something inside her whispered, "Go in." She didn't know why. She just listened to that voice. From across the room, a tall woman began walking toward her. This woman's name was Genevieve Langford, the host of the gala. Genevieve was 45 years old, rich, proud, and used to being admired. She came from a long line of wealthy people and thought she was always right. Her diamonds sparkled under the lights as she walked, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "My dear," Genevieve said in a voice that sounded sweet but wasn't kind. "This is not the place for you. There's a McDonald's a few blocks away." Lila didn't back away. Her voice trembled a little, but she spoke again. "I just wanted to play, just one song, in exchange for a plate of food." The crowd gasped softly. Then laughter started spreading through the room. "She thinks she can play the piano," said a man in a navy blue suit, chuckling. "She probably doesn't even know where middle C is," giggled a lady with pearls. "Oh, children today," said another. "They see things on TV and think they can do anything." The laughter grew louder, but Lila didn't look down. She stood tall, though her hands were shaking a little. There was something strong and quiet about her, a dignity that made a few people uncomfortable. At the very back of the room, a man named Dr. Miriam Zhao was watching carefully. He was a famous pianist and a judge in big music competitions. He knew real talent when he saw it. The way Lila's eyes studied the piano caught his attention. That wasn't just curiosity. That was love, deep, familiar love. "Genevieve," Dr. Zhao said softly, stepping closer. "Perhaps we should let her play. This event is supposed to be about helping young talent, isn't it?" Genevieve gave a high, sharp laugh. "Oh, Miriam," she said. "Be serious. Children like her don't have piano lessons. It's impossible. Look at her." But what none of them knew was that Lila had once lived in a house filled with music. For the first 8 years of her life, she lived with her grandmother, Evelyn Carter, a brilliant pianist who never became famous because of the color of her skin. Evelyn had been denied chances that others easily got, but she never stopped playing. Her tiny house was always full of the sound of piano music, gentle, joyful, powerful. Evelyn began teaching Lila when she was only 4. Lila's small hands could barely reach the keys, but her grandmother would laugh softly and guide her fingers. "Music is a language of the heart, my dear," Evelyn would say. "When you play from here," she'd touch Lila's chest, "people will listen with their souls, not their eyes." By the time she was 8, Lila could play songs that made people cry and smile at the same time. But when her grandmother passed away, Lila was taken into foster care. The piano was gone. The home was gone. Yet the music stayed inside her. Sometimes, in shelters or on park benches, she would move her fingers in the air, pretending to play. It was her secret way of feeling close to her grandmother again. Now, standing in this shiny hotel, surrounded by people who looked down on her, Lila remembered those nights. "Let the music speak for you," she could almost hear her grandmother whisper. Genevieve smiled a cruel smile. "All right, dear," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "If you're so determined, let's make a little deal." The crowd leaned in, excited. They could smell a scene coming. "You may play one song," Genevieve said, lifting one perfect finger, "but we will choose the song. And if you somehow play it well, I'll buy you a full dinner. But," she paused dramatically, "if you fail, and you must leave at once and never come back. Do you agree?" Some people whispered, "That's too much," but most just laughed. Lila took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice came out calm. "I accept." Dr. Zhao's eyes widened. He could feel something special about this child. "Wonderful," said Genevieve. "Now, what shall she play?" She looked around and saw a man named Lucas Avery, a piano player who performed in hotel bars. "Lucas, dear," she said, "what do you suggest?" Lucas grinned. "Let's have her play Beethoven's Fur Elise. Everyone knows that one. If she can't play it, we'll know right away." The crowd giggled. Fur Elise sounded simple, but it was tricky, full of emotion and technique. Most adults couldn't play it perfectly. "Excellent choice," said Genevieve. "No excuses for failure." Lila nodded and began walking toward the piano. Each step was slow, steady, full of quiet bravery. The room grew strangely silent. Even the ones who had laughed began to feel uneasy. When Lila reached the piano, she gently ran her hand along the shiny black surface. Then she sat down on the bench and adjusted its height, carefully, precisely. Dr. Zhao's heart skipped. That's how professionals sit, he thought. Genevieve leaned over to whisper to a friend. "Look at her," she said mockingly. "She probably doesn't even know what she's doing." But Dr. Zhao saw the truth. Lila's back was straight. Her hands hovered perfectly over the keys. She looked like she belonged there. Lila closed her eyes. For a moment, she wasn't in a hotel anymore. She was back in her grandmother's warm living room, sitting beside Evelyn, listening to her say, "Feel the music, don't just play it." "Come on, child," Genevieve said impatiently, tapping her foot. "Are you going to play or just sit there?" Lila took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. The first note rang out, clear and pure. It sparkled in the air like a drop of light. The room froze. Every sound, the clinking glasses, the whispering voices, stopped. Then came the next note, and another, flowing like a soft river. Lila played Fur Elise, not like someone showing off, but like someone telling a story, her story. The song danced and cried and smiled all at once. Dr. Zhao's eyes filled with tears. He had heard many versions of this piece, but never one so full of heart. Each note felt alive. The rich guests stood quietly, their earlier laughter forgotten. Even Genevieve's smug smile faded as she stared, speechless. The cruel deal she had made now felt like a mistake. Lila's fingers moved like they were part of the piano itself. The notes rose higher, then dipped lower, painting pictures of sadness, hope, and love. In every sound was a piece of her grandmother, the lessons, the hugs, the nights spent dreaming of something better. When the last note floated into the air and faded away, the silence that followed was deeper than before. No one moved. Then, slowly, someone clapped. It was Dr. Zhao. Then another person joined in. Soon, the entire room was filled with applause. Real applause, not polite or fake, but full of awe. Lila stood up quietly, her face calm but glowing. Genevieve opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked pale, embarrassed. The child she had mocked had just played better than anyone in the room. Dr. Zhao stepped forward and said softly, "Young lady, what is your name?" "Lila," she said shyly. "Lila," he repeated, smiling warmly. "You have a gift, a rare one. How would you like to study music with me?" The crowd gasped. Lila's eyes widened in disbelief. That night, she didn't just earn a plate of food, she found her future. And somewhere far above, in a place beyond lights and chandeliers, her grandmother must have been smiling. Dr. Zhao walked quietly toward the piano. Her heart was beating fast with curiosity. She had heard many people play music in her life, but what she just heard was something very different. The first note Lila played was perfect. The sound was clear, soft, and full of emotion. Every part of that note was just right. The way it started, the way it lasted, and the way it faded away. Dr. Zhao knew right away that only someone who had practiced for many, many years could play a note like that. "It's just a coincidence," said Genevieve quickly. But her voice didn't sound sure anymore. She tried to smile, but her face looked nervous. Then Lila started playing the main melody of Furus. The music flowed from her fingers like magic. Each note was beautiful and full of feeling. She didn't make a single mistake. She didn't stop to think or look worried. The music came out naturally, as if the piano and Lila were the same living thing. But it wasn't just her perfect playing that surprised everyone. It was something more, something deep. Lila played with emotion, with understanding, like someone who had lived and felt every note she played. Dr. Zhao stood there frozen. The way Lila made the music move up and down in sound, how she used quiet moments to make the next notes even more powerful, it was something only a real artist could do. The entire hall was silent now. You could hear nothing, not a whisper, not a breath. People who had been laughing and talking only moments before now stood still, holding their champagne glasses in midair. Even the waiters stopped walking. Everyone was staring at the little girl sitting at the grand piano. Her small hands were creating music that felt like a dream. Genevieve's stomach began to twist. This was not how she wanted things to go. She had planned for Lila to embarrass herself, to play terribly so that everyone would laugh. But instead, the opposite was happening. The plan was falling apart, and there was nothing she could do. As Lila played, her eyes were half closed. The music seemed to move through her, like light moving through glass. Everyone who listened began to wonder, who is this girl? How can she play like this? What secret is she hiding in her music? If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe and share your favorite part in the comments below. And don't forget to drop a heart to show your support. Dr. Zhao's heart beat faster. She had judged young pianists for 40 years and could usually tell within seconds how much a child had practiced. But this time, she couldn't understand what she was hearing. Lila wasn't just good. She was extraordinary. The hardest part of Furious, a fast set of falling arpeggios that even advanced students feared, came out of her fingers like a stream of clear water. Every note sparkled. Every sound had meaning. Her foot pressed the piano pedals so perfectly that each tone melted into the next without blurring. She played like a master. This is impossible, Dr. Zhao whispered to herself. She stepped closer, wanting to see every movement. Genevieve saw the way everyone was staring and panicked. She had to say something to take control again. She must have copied it from a YouTube video, she said loudly enough for others to hear. Kids these days can copy anything online. But even as she said it, she knew it sounded weak. What Lila was doing wasn't copying. It was too real. It was full of feeling. It was alive. Dr. Zhao shook her head. She had seen many young prodigies before. Children who could play Mozart or Beethoven beautifully. But this girl was different. Lila didn't just play notes. She told a story with every sound. Lila reached the most powerful part of the song, the return of the main melody. Her hands flew across the keys with grace and strength. The music filled the room like sunlight. It was impossible to fake that level of comfort and love for an instrument. As she played, memories began to flow through her mind, the warm voice of her grandmother, Evelyn. She could almost hear her again. Music isn't about playing the right notes, my dear, Evelyn used to say. It's about telling a story that only you can tell. Evelyn Carter had been more than just a piano teacher. She was a dreamer, a believer. She saw the world not just as it was, but as it could be. Evelyn was born in 1940, a time when black musicians were often not allowed in famous music schools or concert halls. But Evelyn refused to give up. She turned her home into a small music school where children from the neighborhood could come and learn classical music. She told them, "This music belongs to you too. The world will try to tell you that some things aren't for people like us," she would say as she gently fixed Lila's posture on the piano bench. But music doesn't care about color or money, or where you come from. Music only knows the truth. For 8 wonderful years, Lila learned everything from her grandmother. Not just how to play but how to feel the music. Evelyn taught her that every composer had a voice of their own. Chopin speaks about sadness and longing, she said. Beethoven speaks about struggle and victory. Mozart speaks about light and joy. And you, my dear, will speak with your own voice. Then, one terrible day, Evelyn died suddenly of a heart attack. Lila's world shattered. She was sent into foster care, far from her home, far from the piano, far from the music she loved. For 4 long years, Lila had no instrument. She played only in her imagination, tapping her fingers on the air or on the cold beds in the shelters where she lived. But she never forgot. The song stayed alive inside her heart. Now, in this shining ballroom at the Hotel Continental, all those years came flooding back. Every lesson, every word of love, every memory of her grandmother flowed through her hands. Dr. Zhao was still watching, her eyes wet. Lila was now playing the final part of the piece. The music began softly, like a whisper, then grew strong and proud, then slowly faded again into gentle quiet. The sound filled the room, touching every heart. "Do you see this too?" Dr. Zhao whispered to another piano professor beside her. This child is not just talented, she's a phenomenon. Genevieve was pale. Everything she had planned had failed. The little girl she wanted to humiliate had turned into the star of the evening. Instead of confirming her belief that poor children couldn't be talented, Lila was proving the opposite. She was forcing everyone in that rich, shiny room to rethink everything they believed about talent, money, and race. "It has to be a trick," Genevieve muttered, her voice shaking. She must have had expensive lessons somewhere. But even she knew that wasn't true. You couldn't buy this kind of playing. It came from the soul. Lila reached the final notes of Furus. She played the ending with such soft beauty that everyone held their breath. When the last sound disappeared into silence, she didn't move right away. She kept her hands above the keys, as if she was afraid that breaking the stillness would end the magic. Then, very slowly, she turned to face the crowd. There was no trace of the shy, hungry girl from before. Sitting there now was a young artist who had found her voice and shown her truth. Dr. Zhao was the first to move. She brought her hands together and began to clap. The sound was soft at first, then grew louder and louder, echoing like thunder through the hall. Others began to join in. Soon, the entire hotel was full of applause. Genevieve looked around in panic. Her plan had turned into something she couldn't control. People were clapping, cheering, some even crying. And in their eyes, Genevieve saw something that frightened her: doubt. They were questioning themselves. If they had been wrong about Lila, what else were they wrong about? Lila sat quietly, letting the applause wash over her like warm rain. But inside, she felt something strong and new. It wasn't pride. It was understanding her own power. She had shown them what she could do. But she also knew this was only the beginning. Dr. Zhao walked up to the piano slowly, as if approaching something sacred. Her eyes were full of tears. "Child," she said softly, "may I ask where you studied? Who taught you to play like this? Your teacher must be a genius." Lila looked at her, her face calm and gentle. For a moment, all the pain of the last few years showed in her eyes. "My grandmother taught me," she said quietly. "She told me that music was the one thing no one could ever take away from me." Dr. Zhao gasped. "Your grandmother?" she whispered. "Not a conservatory? Not a private teacher?" Lila shook her head. The truth hit Dr. Zhao like lightning. A grandmother's love, not money, not fame, had created this miracle. Everything Dr. Zhao had believed about talent and training was being changed right in front of her by a 12-year-old girl. The room was still full of applause, but Lila knew she could never go back to being invisible. Her music had told her story. Everyone had heard it. Now, with all eyes watching her, she had to decide what to do next, to show the world what a poor, unwanted child could become when love and music gave her wings. Dr. Zhao took another careful step forward, her voice trembling. "Young lady," she said softly, "I need to ask you something very important. What is your full name?" Lila looked at her calmly and said, "Lila Carter." The name made Dr. Zhao's eyes go wide. She took a step back, shocked. "Carter? Evelyn Carter?" she whispered. "Are you Evelyn Carter's granddaughter?" Lila nodded silently. Dr. Zhao covered her face with her hands. "Oh my God," she whispered. Evelyn Carter was one of the greatest pianists this country ever had. She should have played at the finest music halls in the world. Her voice broke, full of sadness and respect. Genevieve frowned and asked, "Miriam, what are you talking about? Who is Evelyn Carter?" But deep inside, even before Dr. Zhao could answer, everyone in that hall already knew. They had just witnessed history repeat itself through the hands of a little girl named Lila Carter. Dr. Chin turned to look at Genevieve with a face full of surprise and disappointment. He could hardly believe what he had just heard. Genevieve Evelyn Carter was not just any name in the music world, she was a legend. Many years ago, Evelyn had been one of the best piano players anyone had ever seen. She was called a virtuoso, which means someone who can play an instrument better than almost anyone else. But back then, people treated her unfairly because of the color of her skin. They would not let her into music schools, and they did not let her play in big concert halls. Even though people tried to keep her out, Evelyn never gave up. She became one of the most loved and respected music teachers in the country. She taught many students who went on to become professional musicians. Every person she taught said she had a special gift. She could turn any hard-working student into an amazing artist. The crowd in the fancy ballroom started whispering when they heard her name. Some of them remembered her from stories their own teachers had told. Evelyn Carter was known everywhere among musicians. Genevieve, standing with her arms crossed, said in a sharp voice, "But that was a long time ago. And even if her story is true, She's still just a homeless woman asking for money at a private event. The room went quiet. It was then that Lila, who had been sitting quietly at the piano, stood up. Her soft and gentle posture disappeared. She stood tall, proud, and calm, full of strength and confidence. For the first time that evening, everyone could see her true self. Something about her made people step back without even knowing why. "Miss Langford," Lila said clearly, her voice firm and steady. "You are right about one thing. I shouldn't be here tonight." She stopped talking for a moment, letting the silence fill the big room. "I should be at Carnegie Hall in New York," she continued, "because I have a recital there next week." The whole room froze. Genevieve's face turned pale. She felt as if the floor was moving under her feet. "My name," Lila said, "is Lila Carter. I am the youngest classical pianist ever accepted into the Juilliard School's Young Artists program. I am also the current national champion of classical piano for musicians under 15. Everyone gasped. Some mouths dropped open. Lila waited a few seconds before speaking again. "I am not here tonight because I need food or money," she said softly. Dr. Chin's eyes widened. Suddenly, he understood everything. "The documentary," he whispered. "You're making the documentary." Lila nodded. "Yes, doctor. I am working with PBS on a documentary about prejudice and how it affects who gets access to the arts. My producer asked me to attend charity events like this one, pretending to be a poor young musician, so we could see how people treat those they think are less important." The words hit the crowd like thunder. Genevieve could feel all the color drain from her face. Her hands began to shake. You're filming us?" She stammered. "Yes," Lila replied calmly. "There are hidden cameras and microphones all around this room. Everything that happened tonight has been recorded in high definition, for a national TV documentary." Genevieve turned around quickly, looking for cameras. She searched the walls, the chandeliers, and the corners of the room. "That's illegal," she shouted. "You can't record us without permission." Dr. Chin raised an eyebrow and said, "Actually, you gave permission when you came in. It's written clearly on the tickets that this event may be filmed for documentary purposes. I'm sure most people didn't read the fine print." People in the crowd started talking nervously. Some pulled out their phones, trying to check their tickets. Others whispered in panic. Lila stayed calm. "The first part of my documentary," she said, "shows how people ignore real talent when it doesn't look rich or fancy. The second part shows how people who claim to support the arts act when they are faced with true talent that doesn't come from their world." She looked around at the frightened faces. "I didn't have to change anything," she said softly. "You all showed your true selves when you thought no one was watching." Dr. Chin walked closer to Lila, his eyes full of respect. "May I ask," he said, "what do you plan to do with this recording?" Lila smiled gently. "It will be shown on national television next month. I also post shorter videos on my YouTube channel. My last video, filmed at a similar event in Boston, has over 2.5 million views. People all over the world are watching how those who pretend to be kind often treat others with judgment and cruelty." Everyone turned toward Genevieve. She could barely breathe. In just a few days, the whole country would see her treating Lila and Evelyn with such disrespect. Her name would become known everywhere, but for all the wrong reasons. "Mrs. Langford," Lila said firmly, "you have spent this entire night telling me that people like me don't belong in places like this. That we have no value, no talent, and no right to be part of your world." Her voice grew stronger. "Tomorrow, everyone will see the kind of person you truly are." Genevieve tried to speak, but her throat felt tight. Her words would not come out. Dr. Chin looked around the room. He saw fear and regret on many faces. "How many of these events have you filmed?" he asked quietly. "This is the 12th one," Lila said. "And the results are always the same. People claim to love art and education, but they judge others based only on appearance and status." Then she looked straight at Genevieve. "The difference between you and me, Mrs. Langford," she said gently, "is that I really was homeless once, after my grandmother died. But during that time, I learned something important, that dignity doesn't come from money or fame. It comes from how we treat others when no one is watching." The room was silent. Everyone could feel the weight of her words. They knew that millions of people would soon see what they had done, and nothing could erase it. Lila quietly took a small camera device from her backpack. The room stayed still as she walked toward the door. Everyone was left wondering, how many other fancy people had already been caught treating others badly by the same young woman they had ignored. 6 months passed. Genevieve Langford now lived in a tiny apartment far from the luxury she once knew. One morning, She looked out her window and saw a long black limousine stop in front of Carnegie Hall. A crowd was cheering and clapping. Out stepped Lila Carter, wearing a sparkling concert gown. She waved to fans and cameras before walking proudly inside. That night, she would perform her very first solo concert, as the youngest performer of the season. The documentary Faces of Discrimination had become one of the most watched videos online. Over 15 million people had seen it on YouTube. Genevieve became a symbol of elitist hypocrisy. Someone who pretended to care about fairness but treated others badly. All the newspapers talked about it for weeks. Headlines read, "Charity Organizer Exposed for Prejudice in Viral Documentary." Her event company lost every important client. No one in high society wanted to be near her anymore. Now she worked as a small office assistant, trying to fix her reputation, but it was too late. Meanwhile, Dr. Chin became Lila's mentor and biggest supporter. He helped guide her through the world of professional music. The Continental Hotel, embarrassed by what happened, started a special scholarship for poor young musicians. They made Lila their official ambassador. In her first national TV interview, Lila smiled and said, "Music doesn't care about skin color, money, or where someone lives. Music only understands truth and passion. When you have both, no barrier can stop you." Her words touched hearts everywhere. Music schools across the country began new programs for kids from poor families. Conservatories changed their rules to be fairer. Many talented young people were finally given a chance to learn and perform. Watching Lila's success on television, Genevieve finally understood. Dignity and talent cannot be bought with money. They cannot be inherited with a fancy family name. And they can never be judged by skin color or by the neighborhood someone grows up in. Lila's best revenge was not ruining Genevieve's life. It was proving that real greatness shines brighter than prejudice, and that sometimes, the people we least expect carry the most beautiful gifts of all. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more kind and powerful stories. Watch our next video for another unforgettable journey. And share this story with someone who needs it today.